A very good afternoon to everyone. I extend a very warm welcome to all those who have taken time out to be present this afternoon. And of course, I extend a very warm welcome to and thank our director, Shri Sanjeev Nandan Sahai ji, who is deeply interested in this subject because of various reasons, and he has very kindly consented to formally preside over this and be present on the occasion. So, and of course, I welcome Dr. Priyanka Khanna, who is a junior fellow with us. The subject is both very interesting and revealing. The half-wed wives, rituals of concubinage in early modern Marwar. When we think of the institution of marriage, normally, because our memory goes back to just a couple of generations, so we have this idea in our mind. I mean, when we say we, probably non-historians, that's what I probably mean, that these things have been there like this for centuries. I mean, the fixed idea of marriage, only one kind of legal status of marriage, or only one kind of legal relationship between man and woman, etc., etc. But what Priyanka's work brings out is the fact that in reality throughout Indian history, the conjugal relationship or the relationships between men and women were conceived, formulated, and also legalized and recognized by the society in actually multiple ways. As you know, many of us can recall that the Arthashastra, in Arthashastra, Kautilya says that there are 8 kinds of marriage, and he describes them. And then at the end he says, but if there is any other kind of marriage, marriage is the word that translator has used actually, that's not the word that is used by Kautilya. He says that if there is any other kind of marriage which produces satisfaction to all the parties concerned, a state should have no objection. So I think this is the focus of her work. She has brought out very competently how in early modern Marwar, this practice of concubinage was carried out. What were the legal rights, superior as well as inferior rights, economic rights, social rights of the women who were a part of this system. Apart from this, what her lecture would bring out, I believe very clearly, is the rich tradition of record keeping that many of the Indian states had. Unfortunately, it's, as far as North is concerned, this tradition is really strong only in the case of Rajasthan because of obvious reasons, because there was a continuity of various states there, so they were in a position to maintain records. But I would like to say that in all other parts of India also, there has been a very rich tradition of archive keeping, which has to be tapped by historians. And this is what Dr. Priyanka Khanna has done. So this is an original work, original research that she has done, and I know that she has spent a lot of time in looking into the archives to find the stories of the women who had opted for these kind of relationships. So with these few words, I once again welcome everyone and request Priyanka to proceed with her lecture.
Thank you, sir. I'm grateful to you for this comprehensive introduction to my talk and to all of you for being here on this hot afternoon, especially our director, Dr. Sai, Mr. Sai. I would also like to express my gratitude to PMML for their fellowship, which has enabled me to carry out my project, which is entitled Concubines, Power and Statecraft in Early Modern Marwar. My broader research seeks to foreground the agency of women who lived as concubines of Rajput rulers, exploring their roles and influence within the kingdom of Marwar and Western Rajasthan from the mid-16th to the 19th centuries, a period that saw the rise and decline of institutionalized concubinage in this state. I use the term concubine to refer to women who were engaged in a conjugally oriented relationship with the Rajput ruler without the sanctions of formal marriage. Now, today's paper explores some key rituals of concubinage during the period covered by my project, emphasizing how the position of concubines was articulated, situated and sustained within Marwar's ruling household. In doing so, but in no particular order, The paper introduces these women, indicates medium of their entry into concubinage, describes the processes that shape their identities, suggests likely reasons for practicing concubinage, and highlights indicators to their agency and marginalization, encompassing aspects from their lives to death. The term rituals in the paper title thus refers to both the ceremonial aspects as well as customary processes of concubinage, largely explored in the first 2 chapters of my project. Now to commence with my paper. In his renowned work, Annals and Antiquities of Rajasthan, James Todd, the first political agent of the British Governor General in Western Rajputana, stated, and I quote, "Rajasthan is so analogous to the ancient feudal system of Europe that I have not hesitated to hazard a comparison between them." Quote closed. Elsewhere, in the same travelogue, Todd writes, I quote again, "The laws of semi-barbarous nations which admit of licentious concubinage have ever been peculiar to Orientals, from the days of the wise king to those of Vijay Singh of Marwar, and their political consequence has been the same, these attachments completing the anarchy of Rajputs." Quote over. These 18th and 19th century descriptions of Rajasthan, depicted by its most famous image maker, Colonel Todd, who referred to the region as feudal, compared concubinage to barbarism, and concubines as mere objects of pleasure, have persisted in captivating the imagination of generations. In the public sphere, as a consequence, these kingdoms are often depicted as remnants of feudalism, characterized by Maharajas focused on valor, chaste Rajputi queens committed to observing Parda, Sati and Johar, and concubines largely perceived as docile or cunning women available for unrestricted sexual association. A contributing factor to such misplaced notions is that academic discourse on Rajputs has primarily focused on its eco-political trajectory or the diplomatic history of its male ruling elites. In recent decades, the study of women and gender in Rajasthan has made significant departures. Yet, our historical understanding of institutions like concubinage and the political roles of such women remains limited, as scholarly attention has primarily concentrated on royal marriages and the role of Ranis. This neglect can be attributed to 2 possible reasons. First, fragmentary evidence about such women, and perhaps also hasty assumptions that sources on these women are unavailable. Plunging this gap, this paper draws upon a range of classical Marwari sources, notably the Bahis, that is ledger books documenting the activities of both the state and individual concubines, previously unexamined evidence from Khyats, which were Rajput court chronicles, and select letters and buildings from Marwar. The kingdom of Marwar, situated in present-day southwestern Rajasthan, was ruled by the Rathore Rajputs. It gained prominence in the 15th century under the leadership of Rao Jodha, who consolidated their political center by constructing Mehrangarh, a hill fort in Jodhpur in 1459. Subsequently, Jodha's successor Suja established a distinct space named the Zanana Ghar in Mehrangarh. Initially, this abode of women, as Zanana Ghar translates, served as the royal residence characterized by the presence of elite women. In the mid-16th century, a more structured zanana emerged, with Rao Maldeo incorporating several secondary ranked females into permanent subordinate roles. It was during this time that concubinage was formalized at the Rathore house, with titles of Pardayat and Paswan emerging to denote the distinct status of royal concubines. The slide displays the available names of these women covering 16th to the 19th centuries. These women were acknowledged as permanent intimate partners of the ruler, but were excluded from marriage due to their origins in non-ruling secondary communities, underscoring the role of caste norms in Rajput concubinage. According to these norms, Rajput rulers were prohibited from taking women from the Brahmin caste as concubines due to their high social and sacred status. Similarly, women from ruling Rajput clans were deemed far superior to serve as concubines. Moreover, concubinage excluded women from the lowest social strata, underpinning beliefs in notions of purity and untouchability. This exclusionary practice ensured that concubines predominantly came from lower-ranked Hindu and Muslim communities, thereby contributing to establish a social hierarchy of women, caste, and conjugality within the state. This formalization of concubinage at a time when the Rathore kingdom was shifting from its traditional kinship basis to patron-client relationships served to project the state's ideals of patronage, loyalty and service, with the ranks of concubines representing the highest position attainable for non-Rajput women within the ruling Rajput household. The hierarchical structure among concubines reinforced this fact, with Paswans holding higher status than Pardayats due to their greater intimacy and dedication to their master. As I have detailed elsewhere, the term Pardayat signified within the veil, indicating protection under the ruler, which stemmed from the Parda system in Rajput households. In contrast, Paswan denoted being close to the ruler, originated from its use for a ruler's personal male servants. Given its potential to enhance the resources and influence of women as Paswans, this designation required consent from select nobles and senior women. This was rarely granted, as is evidenced by the few women who attained this rank, which is highlighted in this slide. Examining this slide, one may notice honorifics like Bai, Rai and Sukh are appended to the names of concubines. These titles signified respect, but their absence from some concubines' names suggests they may have also marked distinctions within the ranks of Pardayats. Additionally, descriptors of Bada meaning elder, Chota young, Tija third, etc. denoted sequential induction of concubines who received or bore similar names. It is important to note here that the table displayed is not exhaustive, as some concubines are only referenced by numbers in the records. Moreover, records detailing each concubine's origin, entry into the Rajput household and initiation as concubines are also unavailable. Despite this, fragmentary evidence in Marwari chronicles offers valuable insights. For example, a 17th century khyat by Bard Murari Dan briefly recounts episodes involving early concubines. It states that Rao Maldev's Pardayat Pamba was born to Rukma, a dasi of an elite woman, Padma Bai Devri. Pamba, renowned for her extraordinary beauty, entered Maldev's Zanana at the age of 10 and later bore him 5 sons and a daughter. Another Pardayat of Maldev goes without a name, recounted as the daughter of Gunga Rajput from village Beru Saravto. The ruler encountered her during a religious journey, leading to her integration into his Zanana. Maldev's concubine Vilhi hailed from his grandmother's maternal home and was initially kept by Maldev informally, while her husband Askaran remained devoted. Eventually, the Rajput ruler solidified his claim on Vilhi by taking her as a concubine, apparently after poisoning Askaran. Uday Singh is noted to have acquired his concubine Rani from Falodi in a similar fashion, arranging first the murder of her husband Jiva Pawar. Available records lack any reactions or emotions if resistance from these women and their families, which is unsurprising, as the voices of subalterns could have potentially hindered the consolidation of monarchical power that these chronicles aim to achieve. Additionally, the practice of documenting women without names while noting their inferior backgrounds reflects a long-standing trend of reducing women to social symbols rather than recognizing them as individuals with agency. Interestingly, early narratives about concubines primarily focus on the physical prowess and actions of ruler rather than claims to inherent Rajput supremacy, reflecting the early stages of its political consolidation. This shifts in the accounts of the 17th and 18th centuries, where concubinage evolves from depictions of lust and violence to intricate social maneuvers asserting Rajput control beyond its local territories. Take Sur Singh's concubine Harbansa, recorded to have been brought from Lahore during her adolescence, initially as a caregiver for Sur's son. Over time, she gained his favor, eventually becoming his concubine. Similarly, the story of Gat Singh and Anara illustrates how this wife of a Muslim noble was charmed by the valor of Rajput ruler, persuading him to elope with her. This narrative shifts the enchantment focus from the king to the women, reflecting a layer of strategic maneuvering to reinforce Rajput power, especially amidst their role as subsidiaries to Mughal overlords until the mid-18th century. As the Rathore gained political autonomy with the decline of Mughal power, the number of their concubines increased, evidently with names refashioned to assert greater control of their masters. However, as state record prioritized documenting economic transactions from this period, narratives about concubines dwindled, leaving evidence primarily of those acquired as gifts. For example, in 1766, a renowned singer Gulab was presented to the Rajput house by a Marwari official. Gulab ascended to become one of Marwar's most influential paswans, a topic I have dealt with in detail elsewhere. Similarly, in the early 19th century, a chieftain from Gujarat gifted two singers, Tulach and Chappal, to the Jodhpur court, both of whom became Pardayats of Mansingh. Such skilled performers were highly prized in the Rajput court for their role in enriching its cultural life. The Rathors had a well-organized system for performing arts, differentiating between entertainers for public and private spheres. Public performers like Patars and Bhaktans hailed from professional artist communities, but Rajput elites, particularly in the 19th century, refrained from taking them as concubines, seemingly due to growing assertions from British and indigenous social reformers about their perceived sexual impurity. Private entertainers, including amateurs and skilled, were traditionally the most prospective candidates for concubinage. Amateurs, known as Talim Walis, were local girls who were usually purchased and then trained at the Talim Khana, the household's training center within the Zanana. Those who excelled and were promoted either as Gayan, that is singer, or Nirtaki, that is dancer, gained entry into Zanana's Akhada, which was dedicated for their accommodation and performances. When a ruler decided to declare a woman as his concubine, it was formalized through a series of symbolic rituals performed during an initiation ceremony. The exact origins of this ceremony remain elusive, with available records revealing that it was a female-oriented event organized on an auspicious day within the confines of the Zanana. In the initiation rites, a new concubine received a chuda, which were red bangles symbolizing her conjugally oriented status akin to a wife, and gold anklets marking her entry into the royal circle. The right to adorn precious gems, particularly the assignment of gold, which was colloquially termed as Sona Inayat, served to distinguish concubines from other subordinates who were typically allowed to wear only silver or other inferior stones. Nazar Nitzraval, the next step in the ceremony, involved senior and influential women bestowing welcome gifts upon the new concubine, symbolizing their formal acceptance of her as their ruler's concubine. For example, during Roopjot's initiation as Takhat Singh's Pardayat in 1862, she received a traditional Rajasthani attire valued at 17 rupees from two senior queens of Mansingh and a senior Pardayat Gain Rai. Clothes, money and sweets formed customary offerings in this ceremony, with the extent varying based on the donor's financial capability and perhaps also willingness. For instance, Roopjot received 1 rupee from Bada Champrai, a contemporary Pardayat, while Pan Rai, another contemporary, contributed 2 rupees, a platter of sweets and 2 sets of dresses, one for the new concubine and another for Roopjot's daughter Sadakavar. I will come back to Sadakavar shortly. At this juncture, it is important to note that the new concubine expressed her gratitude to Zanana members through the custom of Page Lagriya, where she touched the feet of elderly women, marking the final ritual of this ceremony. Once designated, a concubine received an independent quarter in the Zanana and personal servants, further highlighting her elevated position. For their daily sustenance, concubines received monthly stipend from the state treasury, and from the mid-18th century, they were also allocated independent jagirs like the Rainis. The slide presents some examples of this privilege. Exploring how concubines utilize their finances to exert their agency in economic, social and cultural spheres will be the focus of my second seminar. Continuing here with their identity construction, after the private ceremony, the state made several philanthropic offerings, possibly to sanctify the sexual and social perceptions of concubinage. This may have been crucial because, contrary to popular notions, physical intimacy was not the sole determining factor in initiating every concubine, as rulers could pursue sex outside the confines of concubinage as well. Returning here to Sadakavar, she, for example, was fathered by Takhat Singh and Roopjot 7 years before her mother was designated as a Pardayat. Similarly, several pieces of evidence confirm that it was not uncommon for concubines to bear their master's progeny before being recognized as their concubine. Since childbirth alone is not an indicator of physical intimacy, it is difficult to determine if prior sexual contact was a customary practice or played a decisive role in the Rajput practice of concubinage. That childbirth alone did not determine every concubine's selection is, however, evident from the fact that many remained childless without it affecting their status or attainment of this position. For example, in 1767, Gulab and another singer named Rang Ras bore sons to Maharaja Vijay Singh. But only Gulab gained the status of a royal concubine, while Rang Ras did not. Instead, her son was given up in adoption to a courtier named Abdar Khan. This suggests that decisions to designate concubines could have been influenced by genuine intimacy and inclinations of a ruler as well. State-sponsored scribes either overlooked, were prohibited, or simply not trained to report the role of emotional dynamics within the kingdom. However, their disdain for exceptional attachments like those between Vijay Singh and Gulab, Gaj Singh and Anana, or Takhat Singh and Naini seem to imply that polygamy did not always foreclose the development of closeness with a particular woman. A prolific way in which rulers expressed their fondness for a woman was by commissioning buildings in their honor. For instance, Jaswant Singh II constructed two structures for Naini, the Jawar Khana Palace and the Nainibai Mandir, a temple dedicated to Lord Krishna, both located in Jodhpur. This is a picture of the Nainibai Mandir. Similarly, records reveal that the now extinct Anna Sagar, a lake on the outskirts of Jodhpur, was commissioned by Gaj Singh for Anara. However, the numbers of each ruler's concubine remind us that emotions could not have dictated the selection of every concubine. This underscores their existence as mere symbols of patriarchal control over women and by extension over their social class. Poignant letters from concubines to their masters expressing loneliness are further suggestive of their symbolic integration. To offer a glimpse into such correspondences, this slide features a letter from Chhota Chandrai to Maharaja Man Singh, where after the initial lettering formalities, her message translated into English reads as, and I quote, "Dear Master, it has been several years since you last visited me. Only your presence can enlighten my destiny. So please accept this request and bring meaning to my existence." Quote closed. Clearly, in the duality of polygamy, where men could have multiple partners while women typically had only one, women like Chand were deprived not only of the autonomy to choose their conjugal status or partner, but also a desired level of intimacy and sometimes even motherhood. The marginalization of women as concubines was further marked by disqualifying their sons from claims to the throne, a strategy ensuring the exclusivity and supremacy of ruling Rajput lineages. Strict distinctions were maintained between the sons of queens, addressed as Kuwar and Yuvraj, and the sons of concubines, who were employed in secondary administrative roles and referred to as Bhaba and Lalji. The daughters of concubines were addressed as Baiji, akin to daughters of queens, but their maternal lineage was emphasized to distance them from their paternal ancestry. Marriage also played a pivotal role in Rajput policy regarding concubines' children, as they were restricted to marry within their own status group, often with offspring of concubines from other rulers. This strategy facilitated alliances and secured resources for the state. For example, in the late 18th century, Tet Singh, son of Paswan Gulab, married a royal concubine's daughter from Jaipur as part of a political alliance between the two Rajput houses against the warring Marathas. Similarly, in the early 19th century, Baba Bhabut Singh was married to the daughter of a royal concubine from Sikar, bringing for Marwar several fine horses and elephants as part of the Daijo ritual akin to a dowry. Daughters of concubines were also married into secondary Rajput clans, enabling the state to integrate these groups into administration and thus strengthen its political structure through these personal alliances. For example, in 1755, Vijay Singh arranged the marriage of his half-sister, born to one of his father's concubines, to Bhavani Singh of village Shetasar. And as part of this union, Bhavani Singh was integrated into state service with the land grant of 10,000 rupees. It was perhaps these little alliances that were facilitated through concubinage that appears to be a potential reason for its perpetuation. In fact, the families of concubines who were drawn from local communities also served as a ready source of service providers whose loyalty, like that of concubines' progeny, could be reasonably assured given their familial connection to a prominent figure within the ruling hierarchy. To illustrate an example from the 19th century, one of Pardayat Magrai's brothers was appointed as the Daroga or chief officer of the state's mint, while another assumed administration over the district of Daulatpura. Records indicating that concubines themselves actively requested the state to employ their family members are particularly noteworthy. For instance, in a late 19th century Bahi, two requests are appended addressed to Jaswant Singh II's chief Rani by Pardayat Chunrai. In one, Chunrai seeks permission for her aunt to join her inside the zanana as one of her servants, identified as Mulji's wife, had fallen ill and she needed assistance with daily chores. In another request, she seeks permission for her nephew's wife to take up service as her servant Lali was unwell. Evidences such as these not only underscore the influential role of the primary Rani as decision makers of the zanana, emphasizing the hierarchical framework of these domains, but also vividly illustrate the agency of concubines in negotiating their own position and familial connections within the confines of the court. The families of concubines, being typically commoners, gained not only economic advantages through their ties to the royal household via concubinage, but possibly also a sense of honor fueled by the reception of royal insignias. For example, on August 15, 1899, when Pardayat Ram Rai's father passed away, the Rathore treasury issued a siropav for him, including a turban, stole, bracelet and some pearls. Analogous to the Mughal robe of honor termed khilat, the siropav, derived from sar, that is head, to pav, that is feet, was a Rajput tradition that honored individuals of merit with comprehensive offerings. It appears that the Rajput state aimed to enhance its local standing both politically and morally by nurturing its concubinage ties through such rituals. However, many concubines were acquired from distant lands, and for them natal alienation was a marked aspect of their lives. Therefore, it is essential to note that the category of concubines was not homogeneous, each having unique life trajectories. This diversity is further manifested in the fact that until the mid-19th century, many concubines, like the Rajput Ranis and other Zanana residents, practiced self-immolation upon the death of their rulers, while several did not. Scholars interpret self-immolation by women differently. Some see it as loyalty, others as avoiding a bleak future. For concubines, it was seemingly also an expression of wife-like devotion, showcasing their full integration into Rajput practices. However, concubine self-immolation, unlike that of Ranis, was not revered as sati, but referred to as beli, meaning simply to burn oneself, reflecting their subordinate role as quasi-wives. Concubines who chose to live after their ruler's death became known as Khalsa ki Pardayat or Paswan, implying concubines under state patronage. They had the choice to stay in the zanana, move to a local palace, or reside in the jagir, which were granted to them for their lifetime. The funeral rites for such concubines and those who predeceased their masters mirrored those conducted for queens. This included the observation of a 13-day mourning with readings of scriptures at the fort, followed by several charitable donations. However, post their death, concubines were treated like other servants of the royal household. The bodies of those who died in the zanana were taken out through the fort's back gates, as the front gates were reserved for aristocrats. Moreover, like other subordinates, concubines were cremated in the grounds of Kaga, a cost-effective location below Mehrangarh, while the ancient Rathore capital of Mandor served as its royal cemetery until the mid-19th century. Dead concubines were also denied the Rajput honor of receiving a chhatri or cenotaph, which symbolizes shelter for the departed. These are some of the royal cenotaphs from the Mandor. The ceremonial elevation for a concubine was therefore only fleeting, as the state removed all signs of royalty upon her death. So to finally sum up, royal concubinage in Marwar was a complex practice shaped by the interplay of sex, service and sentiments with caste politics and power. Marked by personal and intimate relationships, concubinage also served as a crucial political institution that upheld social boundaries through the bodies of concubines and their progeny. These women, seen largely as objects, had little control over their entry into concubinage, but were expected to embody a regal appearance and navigate a balance between elevation and subordination. This dynamic was reinforced through cultural practices which gave them a wife-like identity, introducing a zone of ambiguity in their position and those of the Ranis. This complexity is best captured in a pithy doggerel for royal concubines in Marwar, which goes as Kulta Sachi Kahe Thakurani Kudi, Parde Pardayat Rani So Ruri, loosely implying that a concubine lived like a queen only in disguise. Thank you.
So let me thank everybody for their gracious presence this afternoon and also for their very enthusiastic participation. And of course, I thank Priyanka for this marvelous lecture. Thank you, and we'll continue the discussion over tea.